All right, so this is Flat Earth 101. It was really tough for me to figure out what all to put in here because there's so much information. So I'm just disclaimer, there are many slides. I have a tendency to go a bit fast. I'm sorry in advance. Uh, we're open for questions afterwards. Yeah, if you're not familiar with the subject, just brace yourself. I thought it was wild when I first heard it as well. So, all right, let's get into it. Flat Earth 101. So, for one, this is typically the way that flat Earth is represented. In the mainstream, it's a disk flying through space. Um, oh, it's just a flat planet with all the other spherical planets, and water falls off the side, and you think it's a disk in space. No flat earther thinks that. And so, from the beginning, you should wonder, why is it that they have to misrepresent what flat earthers think? It's stupid, right? So that's what they do whenever they're lying and someone's talking about the truth. So, obviously, making fun of this is called a straw man fallacy. I won't go too debate heavy on you guys, but this isn't what we think. This is ridiculous. Every flat earther would agree it's ridiculous. We don't think the Earth's a flat disk flying through space with spherical planets. So, of course, to address the obvious, almost everyone in here, if they don't think the Earth is a globe, they at one point did. We were all told the Earth is a globe in a classroom when we were really young. And we were also told that Santa existed. So the fact we're told something and believe it because of adults doesn't make it true. So I just want everyone to think about that for a second. Be honest with yourself. Why do you think the Earth's a globe? We know why, because you were told that from 5 up, if not sooner. Everyone thinks that, and that's pretty much it. It's not much deeper than that. In fact, every classroom, there's some kid that raises their hands and they say, well, why don't we fall off of it? Oh, silly, silly student. There's gravity. What's gravity? It's what keeps you on the ball. Okay. When's recess? So that's how it works. We all know that's how it works, but I want everyone to think about this. I'm gonna break a little bit of logic down here, and I don't want to get too heavy on it, but Um, basically, let's say this. Let's go ahead and cover this. What you experience is not that the Earth is a spinning globe. No one in here has ever experienced that. When you go out to a body of water, it's flat. When you see the horizon, it's horizontal. That's why it's called horizon. Which is part of the word horizontal. No one's ever felt the Earth moving. So objectively, what you experience based on observation and experience and empirical evidence is that the Earth is flat and stationary. Now, you might think that's not the case, and they claim, oh, that's just an illusion. It's so big you can't tell. Well, maybe so, right? But on its face, what you experience is the Earth is not moving. The only person in here that might think the Earth's moving has had a little bit too much to drink. So we know the Earth's not moving intuitively. So this is a bit of a timeline. I have a whole stream on YouTube. That's Whitsitt Gets It on YouTube. I break this all down in detail. I'm not going to be able to do that tonight. We're going to breeze through it. But I break down the whole globe deception, the belief that we're on a globe. And this is it. And this is mainstream narratives, right? So you have the idea of the globe supposedly popping up around 350. And that's when you'll get people saying, stupid flat earthers, we've known the Earth was a globe for thousands of years. The truth is that everyone in the world knew the Earth was a flat, stationary plane enclosed in a firmament and everything moved around it for all of recorded history. And even if you believe the story that the Greeks came up with the idea it was a globe, they were considered weirdos. They were like a random weird minority. Side note, they were pedophiles. I don't trust them at all. Who cares what they have to say about the Earth? So just to address the misnomer that everyone thought the Earth was a globe, it's not true at all. In fact, even in China in the 1850s, it was popularly held and known the Earth was flat. And then the Jesuit priest went over there and convinced them it was a globe. So that's just to address that's a lie. But you have the idea that Aristotle looked at the moon and said, that looks like a ball. The Earth must be a ball. And then he said, oh, ships disappear. That must be because the Earth's a ball. And that's the official story. So we'll breeze through all of this. These are very intricate, specific things. Flat Earth is certainly not people that just live in their mom's basement that don't understand things. It's actually people that do diligent research. So I don't have time to go into all of these, but this is what I think is important. I want you guys to know. So we're going to start at 1945, and we talked about that in the last one, Operation Paperclip. It's where we brought Nazis over here, specifically the SS officer of the Nazi regime, Werner von Braun, and put him in charge of space exploration. NASA was working with Disney at its inception, and that's because they are a movie company. But so I covered that 1915 NACA was founded, and that was the predecessor to NASA. What is interesting is they were part of what's called the International Geophysical Year, and that's where every major country got together and said, okay, we're going to monitor the North Pole and the South Pole, quote unquote. We're not going to let people freely and privately explore there, which is interesting. So the reason NACA is important is the deception of monitoring the Earth and who travels on the Earth existed long before 1958, long before NASA, and that was actually done by NACA. Something called the International Geophysical Year was 1957, the year before NASA. So we covered that Operation Paperclip if you weren't here. SS officer, Nazi regime, brought over here with many engineers and quote-unquote scientists. They all basically admitted and came clean to all the crimes of the Nazis. They were all tortured, though, prior to doing that, and you may not know that. So he came over and said, sure, dude, tell me what to do. He claimed that he took us to the moon with his V2 rocket. We covered that on his tombstone was Psalm 19:1, which says that you can't go to space because there's something called the firmament. So very next year, 1946, there was something called Operation High Jump. And that's where the United States explored the Antarctic region, founding the first American base in Antarctica called Little America. This was led and organized by Admiral Richard Byrd. Richard Byrd was then on a interview on national television a few years later. He said, it's astonishing to me that there is landmass as big as the continental United States that no one knows about and remains unexplored. And there's tons of resources. And he thinks it's very important that people go and see what's there and beyond. That's Admiral Byrd, who led Operation High Jump. What's also interesting about this is if you know the history of the Nazis, we won't get too far into that rabbit hole, but you have a swastika. The swastika is actually about the constellation, the Big Dipper, throughout the year. It has 4 seasons. That's what it's about. It's existed for thousands of years. It's also a symbol of peace. It's nothing to do with what you think it is, according to the mainstream. It's about the Big Dipper. That's why it looks like that's the shape of the Big Dipper, and it changes throughout the year and gives you 4 seasons. You can track the seasons by the position of the Big Dipper. Okay. All that to say, they were very obsessed with ancient knowledge. That's why they picked that as their symbol. It actually gets very weird and occultic, and they believe they track back to what's called the star people, and that's also why they use the symbol of the stars. And don't know how ready everyone is for that, but yeah, they believe that entities came from the sky, and they were offspring of the children that they created. Crazy, not crazy, they believed it. So they were obsessed with ancient civilizations, and then they became obsessed with Antarctica. So if you've researched the Nazis at all, they were infatuated with Antarctica, made many trips there, had undercover bases there. The CIA declassified documents talk about how they were obsessed with Antarctica. So what a coincidence that we bring the Nazis over here, and then all of a sudden we're obsessed with Antarctica. The very next year, so it's called Operation High Jump. All this is declassified, easily verifiable. So we go to Antarctica, we start exploring. The very next year, the CIA was founded. So that's probably a coincidence. So the National Security Act of 1947 established the CIA as an independent civilian intelligence agency within the executive branch. The act charged CIA with coordinating the nation's intelligence activities and, among other duties, collecting, evaluating, and disseminating intelligence affecting national security. As the great question alluded to earlier, they actually infiltrated all of mainstream media. They put CIA agents inside of it to propagandize and lie to you, and that's called Operation Mockingbird. If you're watching CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or ABC, you're watching the CIA, and that is a fact. And if you can't come to grips with that, well, you're lying to yourself. It's just a fact. So, the CIA has smuggled drugs, has been involved in human trafficking, has been involved in regime changes, has created all kinds of wars and infiltrated governments and created all kinds of fake opposition groups to start wars to infiltrate that company or that country with centralized banking. If you look at the CIA, they're as corrupt as they come. They were founded the year after we went and explored Antarctica. So I just wanted to put things into perspective for you guys. We have some very bad actors all around this Antarctica situation. 1948, side note, Wernher von Braun authored a science fiction book called Project Mars. And in this science fiction book, the main character's title is Elon, and he founds the first civilization on Mars. Well, what does Elon Musk claim he's about to do? It's just a movie. It's just a script that they tell the public. They wrote it in science fiction books. The moon landing was predicted by Jules Verne, another Freemason in the late 1800s, verbatim, exactly where it would be on the moon. Everything about the moon landing was predicted in a science fiction book. Meteorites predicted in a science fiction book before they were allegedly discovered. The Titanic was prophesied or predicted in the Titan, the science fiction book. So what you'll start to find out is that there are groups of people, they write science fiction books, and then they say, okay, let's tell the public that really happened. So that's what happened here. You can think it's a coincidence, but I think it's relevant because of Wernher von Braun, obviously. Like I said, Elon founds the first civilization in Mars, written in 1948. 1952, the NSA was founded. So right around this time that we bring Nazis over here, we start popping off intel groups. And if you don't know, the NSA monitors every single square inch of your life. Obviously, Edward Snowden came out, tried to tell us, and he's on the run to this day. So just threw that in there because it's interesting. So you have 1955, Operation Deep Freeze. And that's the code name given to a series of U.S. missions to Antarctica. This led into the International Geophysical Year in 1957 and 58, which was a collaborative effort among 40 nations regarding the North and South Pole, specifically that private and free exploration was too dangerous, should be monitored. All major countries agreed, we're going to not let people privately explore there. This was actually basically spearheaded by NACA, because again, 1955, NASA did not exist yet. So we'll have to skip through some of the details. You should definitely look into the history of flat Earth and how the deception began. I'm giving you a brief overview, but they were still obsessed with Antarctica many years after we brought the Nazis. This is a decade later. So 1957, the DEW system is found. That's called the Distant Early Warning Line. It's a system of radar stations in the northern Arctic regions of Canada, Alaska, Greenland, and Iceland, where the U.S. set up trip lines to monitor any activity north of the 55-degree north latitude. It's now called the North Warning System, which it was updated to that in 1988, still in place today. So a lot of people know, oh, you can't freely and privately explore Antarctica. You also can't go to the North Pole. Now, of course, the flat Earth says that's basically the center of everything. That's where everything is spinning. Ancient maps said that there was the Mercator map that you were all shown in school. His original map shows a North Pole with 4 land masses and rivers and a mountain in the middle. So they took that part out, but then they taught you the rest of the map. And so something is going on at the north. And if you understand a flat Earth, you take the compass and you're going to go east to west around the North Pole. And of course, Polaris is over the North Pole and everything spins around it. So the North Pole is very significant. In the globe, it's not significant. It's water. It's ice. It's insignificant. Russia has worked with us with the Northern Warning System. They do not let private and free exploration go to the North Pole. So that should be perplexing to you that it's 2024. You can't freely explore the Earth, north or south. We know why, though. 1957, this is a declassified CIA document that talks about the firmament. Wait a minute. What's going on? So they talk about actually mapping out the firmament and knowing different zenith distances. Zenith is the location directly above your head. So they're saying the distance above your head to the firmament changes based on where you are on the Earth, which sounds a lot like a dome, right? Now, the CIA has mapped this out and says that, in fact, their approximation methods were proven accurate. So the CIA says that there's a dome over the Earth, and they've mapped it out in 1957. They specifically used the word firmament. You've obviously never heard of this. The very next year, 1958, NASA was founded. Okay, so what does NASA say? Oh, well, we're going to tell you what's up above you, and we're going to go to space, and we're going to tell you how it all works. So it's very interesting. It's the same year as the International Geophysical Year. The government has a document. It wasn't declassified till 2000, talking about how there's a firmament. And actually, a Russian scientist figured out how to map it out perfectly. And then the very next year, we have NASA founded. We covered them in the previous presentation, of course. They also have the next year, after Antarctica was founded, the Antarctic Treaty was signed. And of course, that is no free and private exploration to Antarctica, still in place today, not even up for review until 2045. And so people ask questions like, why didn't the Soviet Union tell on the United States? Well, what about China? What about all these people? Are they in on it? They're all in on the Antarctic Treaty. So they aren't going to war over a huge piece of land and resources. So that doesn't add up if they're enemies. They've all agreed to it. In fact, Iran recently said, we're going to back out of that. We think we have, entitlement to Antarctica. You know what happened recently, maybe? The Iranian president died in a helicopter crash.
Yeah.
Side note, Slovakian prime minister came out and said, I'm going to expose the pandemic and everything that happened with it, including the bioweapon called medicine. And then one of his cabinet members said the earth is actually flat. And then he got shot 9 times in the street the next day. So this is a very real thing. So anyway, every single country has agreed, major country that has power to do anything, that they won't let you freely and privately explore it. I threw this in here, another intel agency, 1961, Defense Intelligence Agency. So all of a sudden our government's freaking out. They're making laws and rules you can't freely explore. They're creating all kinds of intel agencies to monitor everything that you do. So a little pattern recognition will tell you what's going on. Next year, 1962, Operation Fishbowl. It's part of a bigger operation called, this is all declassified, of course, called Operation Dominique, which translates in Latin to of the Lord. So this is Operation Fishbowl of the Lord. What does that mean? They're shooting rockets, high altitude, quote unquote, nuclear tests. We'll get into the nuclear bomb fiasco. That's a hoax, but it doesn't matter. They're shooting weapons at high altitudes, and then they call that Operation Fishbowl of the Lord. And they find out that the bombs explode at certain heights. 1962. You couldn't make it up, bro. You couldn't make it up. You know what else happened in 62 right after that? JFK said we're going to the moon. Same year, like a month later. And we covered this. He said, oh, we're going to go not because it's easy, but because it's hard or whatever. Now, we know what happened to JFK. He got assassinated. The CIA was directly involved. Mossad was directly involved, called out AIPAC, called out Israel, called out a bunch of things you're not supposed to call out, called out the Federal Reserve. He's a little too big for his britches. Arguably found out he couldn't go to the moon and would blow the whistle on it. So we'll move forward here. And then you have the Apollo missions in 69. We landed on the moon allegedly. Then 72, the last one, where they slingshot around the moon and take the picture of Earth. And there it is. Debate over. The blue marble, the infamous blue marble. So this shut it down. So when people say, well, what is exposing NASA matter? Well, they're the ones that supposedly proved the Earth's a ball. So there is the history there, so they don't claim to even have a real picture of the Earth since then until like 2015. The default wallpaper on all the iPhones was a globe. And admittedly, Robert Simmons, the guy who did that and was contracted by NASA, said it's completely photoshopped. We take pictures at high altitude with planes. We put it together with a flat map. We then wrap it around a sphere. And then we come in and we paint it with Photoshop and paint. Direct quote, basically. Paraphrased quote from NASA themselves telling you that the default wallpaper in 2002 was a cartoon. Why would you have to do that? Why would you not just use the real pictures? Why don't you take some more real pictures? Because there aren't real pictures of the Earth being a globe. It's all fake. This is probably a painting that they took a picture of. So with Flat Earth 101, I could have gone one of two ways. I guess I could have broke down a lot of the basic questions that you'll have. We'll get into that in a bit, but I want to break down how we know the Earth is flat. And it doesn't really matter if we know how everything else works or not. Okay? So if the Earth is a sphere, then it has specific things that have to be true. It has to be a certain size, it has to be spinning. If it's not a sphere, then what is it? If the Earth's not curving, if this table's not curving anywhere, what is it? It's flat. Okay, I don't need to know how far away the stars are to know that the surface of the Earth is not curving. And I'm pointing it out because that's what always happens. This information gets very uncomfortable. People don't like to hear it, so they default to, well, then how would this work? How do the eclipses work? Well, what are the stars? What are the planets? How far away are they? How far away is the bottom of the ocean? Like, bro, we don't have to know how everything in the universe works. It's insane that people were brainwashed to think that you could know how everything in the universe works. Just pointing that out because I already know that's how it works. People don't face the information and the evidence for what it is. They just try to find some question they think flat Earth can't answer, and then the Earth becomes a globe again. That's not how it works. So claim number one, because we covered that the default position is that the Earth is flat and stationary. That's what you experience. Just like how I have this water in the cup, and if I turn it, it keeps finding level and being flat. This is called fluid dynamics and fluid statics, just basic physics. Water finds its level. That's why we put fluid in levels when we build things. because water finds its level. Okay, so that's the default position, is that the Earth is flat and stationary. We covered that. So there's another claim that says that's all an illusion. Everything's the opposite. So let's cover it. Claim number one is that the Earth is spinning 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, revolving around the sun 66,600 miles per hour on a tilted axis of 23.4 degrees, which taken from a 90-degree angle is, of course, 66.6. So we'll get more into that tomorrow, but also the North and South Arctic circles are at 66.6 degrees. Gravity was discovered in 1666, 666 newtons or 6.66 in, and it goes on and on. The supposed circumference of the globe Earth in nautical miles is 6 times 6 times 600. The diameter of the moon is 6 times 6 times 60. The amount of 666s in the globe model must be just amazing coincidences. So, maybe it's a signature of someone, huh? So that's the first claim. Second claim is that the Earth is a sphere with a radius value of 3,959 miles. Now, this is 101, but 101 of flat Earth, you gotta figure this stuff out. Radius is the distance from the center to the outside of a circle or a sphere. It's called a radius. They claim the Earth has that radius. That's very, very important. We'll get into it. Third claim, the Earth is a sphere in the vacuum of space. These are all cartoons. Notice, by the way, I looked for real ones. They don't exist. They're all cartoons. So that's how you know it's real. So these are the primary three claims we're going to test. The heliocentric model has the burden of proof for these positive claims. Reiterating that, because everyone thinks about this backwards. They think, oh no, but how does flat Earth answer this, 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 and this? You think everything I experience is backwards and it's all an illusion and the creator tricked me. You have the burden of proof to prove that everything's the opposite. This is another cartoon if you didn't notice. All right, so claim number one, that the Earth is moving. And again, just to reiterate so you know exactly how much it's moving, allegedly. It's spinning 1,037 miles per hour east of the equator. Most people know this stuff. It's actually wobbling 3 different ways while it's spinning. It's then orbiting around the sun, 66,600 miles per hour. And then it's actually going through the galaxy at 500,000 miles per hour with the sun. The galaxy then goes through space 1.2 million miles per hour. Supposedly, we're experiencing all of those motions, but you can go out. It can be completely still. You can balance rocks, pebbles on top of each other 20 feet high. But actually, all this is going on. They will claim, well, you just can't tell. It's magic. That's what I call relativity. So, all right, I'm going to try to breeze through this. This is more technical stuff. You can go to my channel to learn more about it, but this is an autobiography. No physical experiment ever proved that the Earth is actually in motion. Lincoln Barnett and the universe and Dr. Einstein. No one's ever proved the Earth is moving. This is Einstein himself telling you that the sun being at rest or the Earth moving or the sun moving and the Earth being at rest are equally valid, and you can't prove that the Earth is moving. Here he is again saying every time we try to develop a test on the Earth to prove the Earth is moving, it failed miserably. We can't prove it. In fact, my theory of relativity had to explain away the fact that everything shows the Earth is not moving. Here he is saying that no optical experiment can prove that the Earth is moving. I'm going to all this is very important and somewhat technical. This is something called Michelson-Morley. One of the most famous experiments in all of physics, changed the entire world of physics. Very simply, they shot lasers. Well, they weren't lasers yet. Light beams perpendicular to each other. If the Earth was moving through space, it would have taken one of the light beams longer to get to the receiver than the other one. Very simply, the light had to catch up to the Earth if it was really moving, and that would cause them to intersect like that, the light beams. Okay, so this is what was expected, and this is what was actually observed. So this was a major problem, because this was over 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be. This is where you get Einstein. We won't even get into how insane that person was, but married his first cousin, wanted to hook up with her daughter, was an ethnic supremacist, so on, so on. So doesn't mean his physics is wrong, I guess. Here's another very famous physicist, an author, Ronald Clark. He's explaining what happened after that test was that they had a serious problem, and there was only a few options. One of which was, he phrases it as scuttling the whole Copernican theory, which is the idea that the Earth is flying around the sun. It's not special. It's insignificant. So basically, he's saying, one showed that the Earth wasn't moving, as it says here, was standing still, but that wasn't even an option. Why is that not an option? Isn't that how we experience the world? Isn't that how we build everything? Isn't that literally what we've seen since we were born? How is it not an option? That's not science. Anyway, going forward, this is This is more technical, but they claim that the apparatus contracted and got smaller, so it looked like the Earth wasn't moving. But if you went to try to measure it, it's going to look like it's the same size. I want everyone to grasp how insanely ridiculous that is. It's like me saying that this table shrank, but if you come measure it, it's going to measure like it's the same size. But trust me, bro, it got smaller. You just can't tell it got smaller. And that's because it's flying through space right now. So it's getting smaller in the direction of motion. Try to measure it. Well, your ruler's going to get smaller too. So it's going to look like it's the same size. This is official mainstream physics, top line academic sources. This is why people won't debate it, by the way. So here's Einstein straight up saying, well, if these tests are true and we are detecting a little bit of spin, then my entire theory is wrong, collapses like a house of cards, etc. So this is supposed to be 101. This is much more complicated. Long story short, here are all the other tests that have proven that Michelson-Morley shows the Earth is stationary. There's a drift. You can measure the sky moving. There are no answers. No answer. Most people kind of default and think, oh, well, I just don't get this stuff. There's a physicist or scientist that's smarter than me that's done it or understands it. Well, tell them to hit me up, because I've talked to many of them and they admit they don't have an answer for these things. So to summarize the motion part, obviously it's simple. You don't experience the Earth moving. Here's Einstein saying, when I was a student, Michelson proved that everything on the Earth happens as if the Earth is in a state of rest, and you'll never notice anything on Earth as if it moves. It doesn't move, huh? Okay, so we haven't fulfilled the burden of proof the Earth is tilted, wobbling, spinning, revolving, flying through space. That's just a made-up claim. So claim number 2 is that the Earth is a sphere. This is where it all gets really so if it is, it has to curve at a certain rate. Like a basketball. The basketball curves the size of the basketball, right? So here's the depiction of the radius. The globe Earth model makes very specific claims about the size of the Earth. If that is wrong, the entire model is wrong. The reason is day and night cycle uses it, distances on the Earth uses it, gravity uses it, supposed missions to space use it. Every single part of the globe Earth model uses that number right there, 3,959 miles. If that number's wrong, the entire model's wrong. I don't need to know what galaxies are, how far away they are. I don't need to know what's under the Earth. We know this can't be true, right? It's very important to rewire your brain, because people are like, well, but they told me that looking back in time and that the sun are different stars, and what's your answer? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If the Earth is a globe, it has to be this size. So let's test it out. So, and make sure everyone understands, if it's a ball, it's curving at a certain rate based on that size. When you look out, you're going to see a hump or like a mountain blocking you. The analogy would be, if I walked around the corner to the bathroom, could you see me still? Of course not. Could you look through the wall and see me? Not unless you're Superman or something, right? So you can't see me. That's what the Earth would be doing. There would be a mountain in front of you blocking what you see at a specific rate. That's called the horizon. The geometric horizon. So the Earth should block you in the distance. So they told us, well, boats go over the curve of the Earth. So I'll bring this back right here. You can see the boat's nowhere to be found. It must be behind the curve of the Earth. Oh, look, there's the boat again. Boats don't go over the curve of the Earth. That's not why they disappear. You can zoom them back in. With binoculars, with cameras, with telescopes, you can see them again. Oh, the bottom of the boat's hidden. Yeah, it's in water. And this is supposedly how they first proved it. And if you Google it, it'll still tell you that boats prove the Earth's a ball. That is a lie. That's not true. So to kind of understand, if you can envision looking down the end of a long hallway, it'll look like the ceiling's coming down, the ground's coming up, and it's converging. That's perspective. And then what happens is they converge to a point and they give you what's called the horizon. So the horizon isn't physical. It is not a curve. It's not something that you can stand on. It's just apparent. It moves around. Okay, now on the globe Earth, it's physical. It doesn't move. It's blocking you. I hope that landed. Here is a video time lapse of the horizon moving. So is the Earth breathing in and out? Is it getting bigger? It's not. The horizon is just an optical place. It's not a real place. It's just based on atmospheric conditions and perspective, it moves around. So here's the horizon has been seen over 10 times further than it needs to be if the Earth's a globe. So if we pause it right here, you'll see that the horizon, this camera is like 1.5 feet off the ground. So it's basically on the ground. And the horizon should be at really 1.2 miles away. These oil rigs are 10 miles away, and the horizon's behind them. That is physically impossible on a globe. And people will make up all kinds of excuses. It doesn't matter. It's basic geometry. The horizon has to be in front of the oil rigs. And no any magical invocation of refraction picks up horizons, lifts it behind a physical object, but doesn't affect the physical object. That's not how it works. That's just a made up story. So this right here refutes the globe. Here's a contrasted higher quality image of that. You can see the horizons clearly behind the oil rigs. The way that you can tell is the oil rig on the left is blocking the horizon. So obviously the horizon is behind the furthest oil rig. Again, at 1 foot off the ground, you should see the curve of the earth at 1 mile, and that's over 10 miles away. This is physically impossible. This is why flat earthers exist, by the way. They went and looked at the earth. It's going to get a little more uncomfortable, though. So these mountains are 255 miles away from the observer, and the observer is at 9,824 feet. There should be 12,800 feet of curvature blocking those mountains. That means there should be over 2 miles of vertical curvature blocking those mountains. You shouldn't see them. They should be below 2 miles of earth curvature. Do you guys know how long a mile is? That's a lot. If there are 2 miles of earth curvature, why am I just looking out, seeing the mountains right in front of me? Now, this is infrared, and the tallest mountain in this picture should be an additional mile below the curve of the earth. This is a major problem if the Earth's a sphere. It is not possible. The Earth would have to be a sphere of over a 250,000-mile radius. It is not. So there's one observation that's direct refutation. Here is actually in the Guinness Book of World Record for the longest line of sight observation ever. Now, you guys know what line of sight is, right? That means I have to look in a direct line drawn from my eye connects to what I'm seeing. This is how the military uses weapons, for example, LOS, line of sight. This is in the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest observation ever, longest line of sight, 275 miles away. So the observer is 9 miles, or 9,000 feet up. So the mountain should be over 3 miles below the horizon. But the mountains are right there. Now, I got a question. If the earth were flat, what would you see if you looked out to see the mountains? Would you maybe just see the mountains? That's why you see them. I don't know how else to put that, but it's pretty simple. This should be over 3 miles below. This should be over 2.5 miles below. They are not. They are observed. Now, here's the Canigou Mountains observed with the sunset. I'm going to play a short video to explain this. But basically 2 times a year, based on the sun sets in a different place throughout the year, it sets behind these mountains, and you can book a flight right now to fly out there in October, and you can know that you're going to see those mountains. And the way you know that is because the sun's going to set behind them and backlight them. Those mountains should be completely thousands of feet below the Earth's curvature. And what do they claim? They claim that it's refraction. So we'll just go ahead and address the elephant in the room if you looked into it. This can't be refraction. That's a shadow. Refraction is about the bending of light. This is the absence of light. It's a shadow. Shadows can't bend due to refraction. They're not light. They're the absence of light. This is physically impossible on a globe, and there's actually no way around it. Even worse than that, you're claiming that refraction just conspires with the Earth on those 2 certain days the sun sets behind the mountains to make the Earth look flat. So we're getting really crazy. Like, who's the conspiracy theorist again? This can be reliably observed. So I'm going to play, I don't know how long this is. I'm going to play a couple minutes because I think he breaks it down for you just so you know the evidence.
Canigou is a mountain located in France that has a top elevation of 9,134 feet. Twice a year, in February and October, many people go to Marseille, France, to film Canigou. At these 2 times of the year, the sun sets directly behind the distant Canigou, creating a mountain silhouette. This event has been observed since at least 1808, and here's a photo taken in 1898. It's a beautiful event, one that I hope to see myself someday, but it's also a great proof of the flat Earth. Let's look at this long-distance Canigou photo from the Beyond Range website. The distance from the photographer in Marseille to Canigou was 163 miles. The observer was 1,050 feet high. Under the globe model, 10,205 feet should have been hidden behind the giant globe curvature. Thus, the very top of the peak should have been 1,071 feet below the alleged Earth bulge. This Canigou observation proves the Earth is flat. But this observation also destroys two other key arguments of the globe propagandists. First is the propagandist argument that we should be able to see forever on a flat Earth. For example, I've heard many times that someone should be able to see the Eiffel Tower from New York if the Earth were flat. I'm surprised at how many times I continue to see this silly argument in emails and comments to me. In addition to angular size limitations, the answer to the claim can be found in the question of why isn't Canigou filmed at other times of the year besides February and October? Without the aid of the sun creating a silhouette of Canigou, it is obstructed by the opacity of the atmosphere, and so you simply can't see it. So, for all other occasions, Canigou would look like this. You can't see it, and that certainly doesn't mean there's curvature blocking it. Only when the sun sets behind Canigou does it become visible at that distance. Otherwise, Canigou blends in with the atmosphere. Without question, the opacity of the atmosphere limits our ability to see at extreme distances. The next propagandist argument is that Canigou is only visible because of refraction. But the Canigou event is visible twice a year in February and October. Does magical curvature removing refraction work on a tight schedule? As you can see in countless examples, refraction certainly does not work on a schedule. Also, according to the globe model, when you watch the sun setting behind Canigou, the sun also must be hopping over the curvature. Can you point me out the time when the sun begins hopping over the curvature? With all of this alleged curvature hopping and bulges disappearing, where is the manifest distortion? Does this event really look like a mirage to you? I cannot help the unreasonable, the hired liars, and the willfully blind, but the Canigou observation from Marseille proves the Earth is flat.
This is the official Earth curvature calculator. This is not a flat Earth math. This is the official claim. Those mountains should be completely blocked by the curve of the Earth. This answers another question. People say, oh, if the Earth was flat, couldn't I see France from here? No, you can't see forever. And that's because light attenuates, which is a fancy way of saying it gets absorbed into the air. So when light's coming to you, it gets absorbed into the air. Eventually, you can't see things anymore. Proof of that is this right here. You cannot see the mountains until the sun gets behind them. If it'll stop tripping, yeah. So this is, even if you thought the Earth was a globe, you'd have to admit, oh, well, the light gets absorbed into the atmosphere and we can't see it. You see how you don't really see the mountains? And actually, if you go right before this, you don't see the mountains at all. I want everyone to kind of get this. If you see here, you don't see the mountains, then you start seeing them. It's because the sun's a super bright light. Now it's not completely absorbed, and now there they are. Now, can we all just be real with each other? Can we level with each other? Those are just the mountains. We're just seeing the mountains. The alternative claim is that's an illusion. Those aren't there. If you think the Earth's a globe, you have to think that those mountains are not actually there. Well, I can book a flight right now and go see them on a specific day. So that is a direct falsification of the Earth being a globe. Here are some more, and then we'll get into some of the basic questions people typically have. You can do something, everyone in here can do it for like $10. You can take a mirror, go to the beach, and you can reflect light with the mirror. You can stand on the other side based on how far away you are. The Earth should curve and block the mirror. You have to have a direct line of sight with that mirror because the light has to reflect at a certain angle to see it. We've done mirror flashes over 20, 25 miles on the beach, directly on the beach. Should be under like a mountain of curvature. Yeah, you can just see it flashing. In fact, the military has used this for years because it's a silent form of communication to people to know target acquirement and know their position. So the people will use little pocket mirror flashes in the military because then they can't hijack the comms and hear where they're at. So the military knows that the Earth is flat. Here's something called specular reflections, a proof that everyone can go look at for themselves as well. So I put these in here. You see the mountain is reflected on the water. People have probably seen this before. If the water begins to move just a little bit, you see how the picture gets distorted. Okay, that's called a diffused reflection, meaning if the surface is not flat, the light will not reflect and you will not get one of these. So the fact we're looking over large bodies of water and we're seeing the direct one-to-one reflection means the surface of the water has to be flat. If you've ever seen like a clown house mirror, you look all distorted, it's because the mirror is bending. If the water's bending, you can't get a reflection. It's called a specular reflection. If the Earth is curving, you would have a diffused reflection. This would be impossible. They're observed all the time, all over the world. This is a falsification of a globe. All right, here's another one. Radio waves can be sent over 10,000 miles with no curvature obstruction. This requires a bit of a history lesson, but there are many people probably know someone with a ham radio license. And they falsify the globe on a daily basis. So this is how radio waves work. They're actually light. They're non-visible spectrum of light. Most people don't know. We only see about 1% of the spectrum of light. So back in the day in 1901, Marconi sent radio waves across the Atlantic Ocean, and he sent them like 2,200 miles, and everyone's like, bro, you're crazy. You're not going to be able to do that. The curvature of the Earth is going to block the radio wave at like 200 miles. You can't do that. He's like, oh, I'm going to try it anyway. First attempt, successfully sent it, line of sight, horizontal, 2,200 miles. Official history, by the way. History.com will actually tell you that exact story. So then what did they do? Did they accept, oh, the Earth is flat? Of course not. They said there must be a layer around the Earth where the Earth or the radio wave reflects back down to the Earth. And so, because of course, if I shoot something out straight and the Earth's curving underneath me, it's going to start going towards space. Oh, well, there's something up there that's going to reflect it back down. And it's pure coincidence it landed right where you had that station that was trying to receive the signal. So that's a cool story, and it's called the ionosphere. And they claim that it goes 30 to 40 megahertz. So to keep it pretty simple, it's just the frequency of the wave. The problem is, if anything is over that frequency, it goes right through it. And this can be tested in the lab, right? Ionized gas is called plasma. So when there's a charged up gas, it's called plasma. It'll reflect radio waves. But if the signal's higher than the frequency of the plasma, it'll go right through it. We have radio waves. Here are a few, 106 megahertz, so well over 30, going 2,500 miles. These are the world amateur records. 2,100 miles, 2,500 miles, 2,700 miles. And these are not even the worst ones. We have them going up into the gigahertz, going hundreds or thousands of miles. Direct line of sight, horizontal propagation refutes the globe. This happens every day. That's a problem. Again, they claim it bounces off the ionosphere. These frequencies are too high to do that. So how are we receiving them thousands of miles away? Here's a military document called Propagation of Electromagnetic Fields Over a Flat Earth. In order to create a ground weapon system, they had to assume the Earth was flat, specifically a dielectric plane. Here's another Army military document, computationally efficient algorithms for estimating the angle of arrival of helicopters using acoustic rays. So to interpret their data of sending out sound waves at the ground to land, had to assume the Earth was flat. That's a major problem because if it's reflecting off a sphere, it's going to be at a different rate or duration. Derivation and definition of a linear aircraft model. In this document, it says you have to assume a flat and stationary, non-rotating surface of Earth. I will tell you there are maybe thousands of these. So it's no secret. The excuse is they do it just because the math is simpler. No, it's because it won't work if you don't treat the Earth like it's flat. And specifically, math or no math, this wouldn't work the same if the Earth was a globe. So the military knows. And side note, I'll plug this real quick. This is anecdotal, but former Air Force pilot got kicked out because he wouldn't let them genetically modify him recently. Veteran for almost 3 decades. He was a WSO, weapons specialist officer. And he told me about how when they were overseas, deployed in Afghanistan, they saw the K2 mountain range, which is 28,000 feet tall, while they were flying at 28,000 feet up, directly level with them from 300 miles away. So according to the globe Earth, those mountains should have been way below them, multiple degrees below them. He used an actual targeting pod in his weapons specialist officer seat in the back of the plane to spot those mountains were directly level with them. That's really impossible. I mean, refraction doesn't help with that. I mean, this guy obviously has to remain anonymous. I actually verified his identity, his name, looked him up and everything, but he's afraid to come out for obvious reasons. He still contracts through them. So that's pretty telling. He's given me like 5 different evidences. He said that all the technology they use in the Air Force the Earth has to be flat. Take it or leave it. Maybe you know someone's in the Air Force. Go ask them some questions. Ask them how the radar works. Do they use linear functions? Okay, claim number 3, and then we'll get into more of like how does this work questions. I don't have a bunch of slides for this one because I knew I was going to be pushing it time-wise, but supposedly the Earth is in a vacuum. And so the simplest way to show that this is impossible, I will tell you, it's called the second law of thermodynamics, blah, blah, blah. Fancy way of saying when you open the soda, it goes psh, because it's equalizing to the lower pressure around the soda. So there's pressure built up in that soda. Once you remove the sill, it equalizes. That's because high pressure goes to low pressure. That's called the second law of thermodynamics. It isn't really a debate or a theory. It's just a fact of physics in natural world, right? It's called the second law. Heat goes to cold as well. Same thing. Your coffee, if you make coffee, it'll cool off. It's because the heat goes to the cooler region. If you leave your door open, the AC will leave, right? The heat will rush in. So very simple stuff. High pressure goes to low pressure. Heat goes to cold. So they claim we obviously have an atmosphere. If we didn't, you wouldn't be alive. And they claim it's inside of a vacuum. Now, this is a major problem because the air is going to fill the vacuum. And violently. It's not going to take its time. It's going to violently fill the vacuum. So the technical argument is that entropy will increase in all natural and spontaneous systems. The system will spontaneously seek equilibrium, violently filling the available space. You can also look at gas law. But the problem is the globe Earth claims that we're just flying through a vacuum with no container. Conveniently, we know that the Earth is contained, just like the CIA does, which is why they mapped out the firmament in 1957. So that's why you have gas pressure, is because it's contained. It's not around a vacuum with no container. You're not flying through, whizzing through bottomless pit in all directions with nothing protecting you. You may die from asteroids. That's all fake pseudoscience. So long story short, this isn't real. This is scientifically and physically impossible. I've asked every PhD under the sun that will talk to me. They have no actual answer. They'll say gravity. Then when you ask them, wait, gravity's strongest at the surface. It doesn't stop gas from filling available space here. How would it do it where it's weaker, closer to the vacuum of space? And they just give you, I don't know. So we're talking PhDs. So here are for some of the questions. So people will say, well, how does the sun set if the Earth is flat? So conveniently, I put this picture here. I'll show you a video right here, I believe. So check this out. Obviously on the globe Earth, we're spinning. So when we go look at the sun and it sets, we're actually falling backwards. We just can't tell. And the sun looks like it's moving, but it's not moving. That's an illusion. And so when the sun starts setting, it's because we're falling backwards, and then the Earth's curvature blocks the sun. Okay. Other option is we don't feel like we're moving because we're not. The sun looks like it's moving because it's moving. I know, I'm crazy. So now here's a problem. They claim that the sunset happens because the Earth's curvature blocks it. The sun's going below the Earth, right? Well, here's a video of the sun, and people will say, oh, because it disappears bottom up, it can only be the curve of the Earth, blah, blah, blah. Here's an actual video of a real sunset. Wait a minute. What's happening here? The sun is setting way above the horizon. So the curvature of the Earth isn't blocking the sun right here, is it? So this proves that no, the sunset happens because it moves away in the distance, and based on the horizontal layers of the atmos, it gets too far to see it. And the bottom of the sun gets to the thicker part of the atmosphere first, it just starts to disappear. It's like if I take a flashlight away from you in the fog, you can't see it. See, flat Earth isn't super complicated. And anyone that tells you sunsets don't work on a flat Earth, are sadly mistaken. In fact, they only work on a flat Earth because here we are watching them disappear above the horizon. So that's how the sunset works. I got another visualization for you. Here's a time lapse of the sun. As you can see, does it look like the sun's moving away from us? Well, the globe says the sun's the same distance the whole time, and we're just spinning, falling away from it. We can clearly see that the sun's just moving away from us. That's why it's hotter at noon, because it's right above you, not 93 million miles away. Here's a depiction. We have a hallway. You see the streetlights. Let's look at the streetlights. All those streetlights are the same height, right? But they look like they're going down. They're all the same height. It's because of perspective. Perspective makes the streetlights look like they're going down. Here's a time lapse of the sun in the bottom right here. Looks exactly the same, huh? And so a good analogy is, it looks like railroad tracks are converging. If you flipped the railroad tracks on their side, that would be the sky and the ground. Just looks like it's converging, just like railroad tracks do. And the sun is moving away. Looks like it's going down like the streetlights do. Eventually, you can't see it because it gets too far away. So that's how the sunset works. Here's one of my favorite videos ever. This is my friend Rakia Life. He's in Louisiana. But watch the sun here. This is pretty fascinating. What you will find if you look this up is sunsets debunk flat Earth, and they can only exist if the Earth's a globe, and they disappear bottom up because they go behind the curve of the Earth and all this stuff. No, we've seen the sun disappear above the Earth multiple times. The sun is not going beneath the curve of the Earth. And what's so funny is, even on its face, we're supposed to believe this straight horizontal line right here is a curve. No, it's not. It's called a horizontal horizon. But if you look here, this is super cool to me. You're going to see the sun start to disappear. Let's just move it forward. Yeah, look at that. The sun's disappearing all of a sudden above the water. Look, it's just disappearing into the air. This is, of course, proof that the sun disappears because of the atmosphere. There is no sphere, of course, because air doesn't have a shape, and nor is the Earth a sphere, but you get it. The atmos. So there's proof of that. To cover that, here's a few more things to wrap this up. So day and night cycle, people say, why isn't the whole Earth lit up, right? Like, why isn't it daytime all around the Earth if the Earth is flat and the sun's here locally? Well, we just covered why, right? The sun disappears into the air. It can't travel forever, the lights. I won't go into the fact that light can't actually travel in the first place. It's a whole thing. But anyway, here is a depiction of how day and night works on a flat Earth. So here's a dome. We're going to take a light source and you're going to see how it works. This bottom animation here is the actual day and night data throughout the year. So June, March, December. What a coincidence. If you put a light source near a dome over a flat Earth, it perfectly matches day and night on the Earth. That's coincidence 4005. So as to whether or not day and night works, of course it does. No, it wouldn't be daytime all the time. No, you wouldn't see the sun from across the whole Earth. All right, another question we get, because there's only a few I have on here, seasons. I figured a lot of people may ask questions, but here's how the seasons work. The sun moves in and out from the center throughout the year. So over a flat Earth, it just moves over top of the Earth. So obviously right now, it's summer for us, so the sun is closer to us, like right here. You can also take a time lapse of the sun, and it does a 360 around you in the north. So like in Alaska, you can see 24-hour sun. The sun goes in a perfect circle around you. Well, yeah, that's how it works on a flat Earth. And then it moves back out throughout the year, and that gives you winter because the sun's further away from you. So you have shorter days. It gets darker quicker, and then you have the winter because the sun's further away. Now it's their summer. So that's how it actually works. I bet most people in this room don't even know how the globe model claims it works. I'll tell you. They claim that the Earth is tilted. So if you look right here, they claim that the Earth's a ball that's tilted. The sun's coming from 93 million miles away, and it's heating up the Earth. There's a problem, though. So we see that if we look at the temperature signature data, right? So the actual heat temperature of the heat signature of the Earth, the hottest part is the equator. Most people probably know that. Well, if the Earth is a tilted ball, if you look up here in the top left, the sun rays are actually going to hit the Earth slightly above the equator first. That means if the Earth is a ball, the hottest part of the Earth should be above the equator because the sun rays will hit the Earth first because it's tilted towards the sun. I have never heard a rebuttal. I've been in this for 8 years. I've talked to all of them. There is no rebuttal to this. This is a major problem. Now, look at the bottom left. Oh, remember we saw the sun just moves in circles over the Earth. Of course, the equator is the hottest. The sun is over that area the longest. So it makes perfect sense on a flat Earth. And this is why you get the analemma, because the sun moves out away from you and then it comes back and gives you your seasons. It changes its path throughout the year. That sun actually gets smaller in the winter because it's further away from you. It literally is smaller in our sky, even with solar filters. So that's a major problem for the globe. It's also an explanation so everyone knows how it works. A few more things and we're almost done. So people will say, well, how do all the planets move? How do the orbits work? Stuff like that. If you see here in the center, this is the Earth in the center. So this is a geocentric model, which means Earth-centered, right? So if you have the Earth stationary, it's in the center of the universe. It's just all the planets mapped out on a stationary Earth. And it makes a flower of life. So this is sacred geometry. It's called a flower of life. Now, what's interesting is this right here on the left is a Farrell cell image of a magnetic field. So magnetic fields give you that exact same pattern. So when people say you have no flat Earth model, no, actually, we have a far superior model. It's seen at all scales of physics, from quantum all the way to the cosmological scale, and it perfectly matches the sacred ratio, the golden ratio, the flower of life. Now, the heliocentric model is just like chaotic. It doesn't make any sense, but the stars keep resetting. So here's a few more depictions for you. So you remember I showed you guys the fake model. This is the real model. And someone asked about the ISS earlier. If you look here, this is the ISS trajectory on a flat Earth. Interesting. It's the same exact pattern as the magnetic field. It's almost as if there's a magnetic field and they can catch the field lines and move around. What's even funnier is they said we can't go to space because of the Van Allen radiation, right? Well, yeah, they can't go to space. They're in a torus field. It's a magnetic field. There's a firmament. So now what's interesting is why does the ISS not go over the North Pole or the South Pole? So this is very quickly flipped around, and now the ISS is a major problem for everyone but flat earthers. This avoids the North Pole and the South Pole. All satellites do. These are all the paths of the planets. This is the magnetic flux data mapped on a flat Earth. It does a vortex. I encourage people to look more into a lot of the specifics of this. I don't have time to go into the technicalities, but just so you know, these are Farrell cell images of a magnetic field. That's how they look. The planets perfectly match it. The paths of quote unquote satellites perfectly match it. So when they show you this is fake. This is not what anyone thinks. And if flat Earth is so stupid, you wouldn't show people that. You would show them this and tell them why it's stupid. They'll never do that because this is the unified theory of everything. It's hands down far superior to anything that modern physics has to offer. So in conclusion, that is our actual model. That's my model. Look, I don't speak for everyone else. The thing about flat earthers are they're all very open-minded. They think for themselves. We're not a cult of thought, but simply the Earth is stationary. The sky spins around it. We're inside of this giant torus field. Like I said, this may be a foreign concept to you. You should look into it. But in summary, what we know it's not is this. This is not real. And it's okay. It's okay. So there you go, flat earth.